Bonjour, c'est Hugo. Alors, bienvenue à cette émission spéciale qu'on fait pour découvrir nos voisins et nos voisines de Kahnawake. Alors, qui s'intitule évidemment les Kanien'keháka, hôtes sur leur territoire et voisins au quotidien. Cette semaine, on va parler de tourisme. On a une invitée spéciale qui s'occupe du tourisme à Kahnawake, qui va nous parler de l'historique. On va passer à travers un peu d'historique, mais aussi qu'est-ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qu'il y a à voir. Et puis, on va avoir une conversation sur questions touristiques, culturelles et régionales ensemble. Donc, sans plus tarder, je vous présente Kimberly. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Just to start so that we can have a conversation and know our neighbors, maybe talk to us a little bit about you, your parcours, if I can use the French term, because I know you understand and speak French a little bit.
Yes.
So if you can talk to us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Kimberly Kaniehténhawe Cross. I am from Kahnawake, born and raised, still live there today. I work for Kahnawake Tourism, which is part of our Economic Development Commission. And I'm Bear Clan. I'm a mother. I'm a volunteer in my community. And I'm very passionate about seeing our community grow and thrive and get back to, as much as we can, live in our traditional ways, living off the land while respecting, what we take is only there for us to take, and then we still have to give back to the land, practicing our culture, our language, and then teaching that to the other generations. So doing that through tourism is a little bit of a passion of mine. So I'm really glad I get to share that with you today.
Yeah, that's great. So you went to school, I guess, in Kahnawake, of course.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then after that, did you go to Billings or did you go to another?
Actually, no. So I started my primary studies in the community, and then I went to here in Chateauguay. I went to St. Willibroad.
Okay.
And I did my secondary studies in Lachine at Lakeside Academy.
Okay.
I continued my post-secondary at Dawson College, where I studied travel and tourism. Wasn't sure where that was going to bring me. I thought I was going to travel the world and do all kinds of things. And then I went into, I was always good at languages. I was really good with kids. I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still don't know, I always say. And I went into studying French at Concordia University. I wanted to learn the language a little bit more. I was good at it. I said, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then I realized it wasn't for me. I didn't want to go in the teaching field. So I had to kind of find my way and see what I wanted to do. So I took a few years of independent studies, did some business courses, anthropology, finding who I was. And my job of tourism development agent at the time became available within the community. And it was a pilot project that our community was bringing back because we had tourism in the past. And I said, that sounds like it's for me. And my mother saw the job and she said, you should apply for that.
Go.
And
cool.
My husband, my boyfriend at the time then was like, you should apply for that. And I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. So I did. And I was the lucky candidate and still going at it today. So, in that time, I started a family and I did take a break from working and I went back to school for our language. So I took our adult immersion program, and I went back to learn Kanien'kehá, and so that I can share it.
Oh, that's great. So speaking about tourism, so historically, you said it used to exist and then it sort of died out and it came back. So maybe we could talk about the history of it a bit.
Absolutely.
Tourism.
The funny thing we always say, and not just here in Kahnawake, but in indigenous tourism world, is we were the first tourism operators back when settlers arrived. We showed people the land and we taught about our culture and our ways, planting, taught them how to survive on this land. So, we were the first, we were the stewards of the land and the first tourism experiences, I guess you could say, for those settlers who were coming, and were maintaining that tradition. But we did have, long before I was born, we had experiences within the community that were tourism. We had Chief Pokenfire's village.
Yep.
That was so popular. We have, we have some podcasts about it on our website, where we brought some of the old dancers who were a huge part of it, where their family would sell goods there, and they were talking about the dancing. And that was a huge part of our community, because I mean, at the time our population was smaller. Our economy wasn't huge, because we still lived a lot off of agriculture. Our workforce was smaller, and it was the time when, women still didn't go to work all the time. They still stayed home. So that was a big part of, sharing our culture. And, at that same time was around when the Indian Act was enacted, and a lot of the Indian Act was prohibiting us to practice our culture. So when we put on shows about who we are, it was almost a way of us preserving at the same time. So, it was a safe space that we could share, but we could keep maintaining it at the same time, maintaining our language, maintaining songs. Back then, when the Indian village was happening, it wasn't totally authentic, which we tried to do today. However, we were relearning at that point. There was a time where we lost a lot of our traditions, and then we had to search for it again with our sister communities, with our other populations of, Kanien'keháka people or Haudenosaunee within our confederacy. So that part of our culture came back. It's taken a lot of work, and we're very fortunate, I think, in Kahnawake. So yeah, in a nutshell, we've always had tourism. And so about 13 years ago, almost, the Economic Development and our Mohawk Council of Kahnawake realized that the importance of bringing a body, a team, a group of people. Let's see, how are we going to lead tourism within our community once again, so that we can get it going? Because in 2012, the first Indigenous saint, Saint Kanien'keháka, she was canonized. So they saw that as a big catalyst, a point where we can move forward, because the church was receiving visitors already. It was increasing. So they needed help with structuring their product, their little destination. How are we going to accommodate tourists coming in? How do we accommodate multiple different language speaking communities coming in? How do we train our tour guides? How do we get these schedules and pricing? So we helped them develop. And since then, it's kind of been going into the whole community about how we are leading tourism and offering a nice, authentic product.
Wow, yeah, it's we're jumping from Chief Pokenfire to the saint. Just a little question on the side: have they found the skull, or is it still just the body bones?
There's so many stories.
There's a lot of mythology around that.
There's a lot of stories, because before we settled in our location that we are right now in Kahnawake, our community was always traveling along the St. Lawrence before the seaway was constructed, and we lost that connection to the river directly. We were all the way to La Prairie. We had different locations that we moved, and where we've just built our new cultural center and museum is actually called Kanien'kehá, which was the last village site that we had with longhouses near the river. So Saint Kanien'kehá actually lived with us in one of the previous sites. So when the community moved, they brought her.
Okay.
Because she was such an important pillar of their society. Our population was very Catholic at that time, very religious, and they really, honored her so much that they kept her, entombed. But, back then there weren't security cameras, and there people who were very religious, and even still today, they see those relics as so powerful, and which is one of the reasons why she was canonized, because of the different miracles that were performed. So, there were a lot of parts of her that went missing. So there's some that say they have, you know, a lot of pieces in Kahnawake, but there's some scattered. Some say they're in Akwesasne, some say they're all over. And then you hear stories that they're all over the world. So she is quite scattered. Yeah, I don't know exactly which parts that we have, but they do have them at the shrine. People could ask.
Yeah,
they bring them out every now and then, and they do ceremonies with.
I remember it was a big thing. I mean, buses were coming into town.
And that was a big part, you know, around the same time as Chief Poking Fire's Indian Village, that buses would come to the church, and some of the women or families would set up tables with all their crafts and souvenirs, and they would make good profit there. So, you know, that was a big part of our economy. So,
you know, community control and self-representation in culture, in tourism, how much of, because you're talking about, you know, going back to the roots, and how much of what you're putting forward in tourism is also putting forward the culture to not only show it and share it, but also to revive it in the community?
Well, a lot of what we're doing in terms of revitalization sometimes is sharing, but not too much. So what we're developing actually right now, because in what we've learned over the past few years, is we have certain, you know, apprehensions when we're about to share something. So we kind of have that knowledge of that's too much, we shouldn't share it. And then we go to, you know, some elders or knowledge keepers, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. So we're actually in the practice of creating a cultural sharing policy. What can and can't we share? What shouldn't we? How far can we go? So that we at least have that, a little document or, you know, something saying what we can and can't do, so that we're not going in the wrong direction. Because it is something that we are very mindful of. We don't want to overshare, and then people start practicing, you know, our traditions, our ceremonies, our crafts. We see a lot of replications happening of our jewelry, our moccasins. You know, you see them on the internet being sold, and then our people are not getting those markets, those dollars. They're not getting that exposure, and it's taking away from the authenticity. So we're trying to be really mindful of that. So in our products, our services, everything we offer is authentic, but mindful that, well, you're not going to get to come and see a traditional festival and ceremony. You're never going to participate in that unless you're Indigenous, and you're invited if you're not from our community. So
like the Longhouse, for example.
Longhouse, exactly. So we still participate in our traditional ceremonies. There's a lot of people that go. We have our own, you know, songs and dances. And, you know, when we came in, we were speaking of the naming ceremonies. You know, those things are very private. But then we have, you know, our events that we've created for our food festivals, which has been created around our cycle of ceremonies, which is traditional, our cycle of ceremonies. It's all based about food. But it's a fun way where we can talk about the importance of the foods, the importance of those ceremonies, without telling how it's done 100%, and giving all the details.
It's like inviting guests at your house. You show them around the house, but not all the house.
Not all the rooms.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Well, I mean, it's funny because I always like to joke about it, but, you know, Italians shared so much from, like, half my background is Italian, and we have like Italian stuff everywhere, like pizza and spaghetti.
Oh, we have Italian restaurants in Kahnawake.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't share too much. You take everything. You get like Greek owners of Italian restaurants, but no, it's just a little joke on the side. Growth and evolution. Well, we've touched on it, but I mean, it must have, at a certain point, like there's, like we spoke extensively of 1990 and all the other episodes, and I think it will always be there. It won't disappear. But that part of history really, that conflict really put a big stop to every, you know, movement forward in knowing each other and understanding each other, and certainly permitting each other to expand culturally. And tourism must have been like completely devastated. But after like you're talking about when Kateri was brought into Kahnawake, but was there a start of recuperating, any type of reconnecting before Kateri, or?
For sure. There's a lot of business within Kahnawake. We're full of entrepreneurship within the community, and we have so many businesses. So, that I think sparked, having that exchange with our neighbors, the economy, really helped starting bridging those gaps. And people who are in our neighboring communities who are supportive of Kahnawake would come to the community and support those businesses. So I think, we have a Shop Kahnawake campaign that our economic development puts forward, and we promote that at tourism. All of our businesses. I think that was a big catalyst in the healing of those relationships, and tourism is a fraction of, the many different things that are being done to help that. But that's one thing that we strive for, is to bridge those relationships between our neighbors. It's not just to reach tourists who are coming from overseas or, anywhere. A lot of our clientele are right from around here, right from Montérégie, Montreal, or Ontario. That's our biggest clientele, and it's educating our neighbors about our true history, because it wasn't given.
Exactly.
Our story wasn't shared. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do the most, is to tell our story from our perspective, sometimes for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
I went to see the latest movie that Helen Gabriel did for I believe her doctorate, or anyways, some part of her studies. And I don't quite remember. I think it's something about pines. And I thought it was great. Went to Kahnawake, we went to see it. Just thinking off the top of my head, wouldn't it be a beautiful venue to receive? I think you're waiting for the cultural center maybe for these things, but to have a venue where you have Indigenous, cinema or movies or documentaries.
Oh, for sure. So like our cultural center, and we've done in the past as well, video screenings in partnership with the First Peoples Festival in Montreal. But the new facility that we actually just did a soft opening for the cultural center, they've moved in on April 1st. So they're using the space right now for their offices.
Oh, that's good.
And we're hoping to do our grand opening in September this year. So the theater that we have there is fully equipped to do video screenings, to be like a cinema. So we will be doing those exact screenings and having a fluid schedule of all the different showcasing our local talent, our, filmmakers, and then even larger. We did one about 2 years ago, the sugarcane film. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No, I haven't.
That was one that we highlighted. So, we always encourage, learning, and it's not just for other people to come, but even our own community to learn about, Indigenous peoples around the world, and, everything that we're all going through, and being able to see it from our own lens.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when we talk about Indigenous tourism, we always think about powwows. I guess the powwow must be one of the biggest events in Kahnawake.
Oh, for sure. The powwow has grown significantly in Kahnawake, and I think across Turtle Island, we've seen a growth in people attending powwows. And I mean, why not? It's fun. It's good food, good energy, dancing, and great shopping. I know, like, I've got these at powwow. But the one in Kahnawake, it doubled after the pandemic.
Yeah.
We used to have about 8,000 people, sometimes 10 coming throughout the weekend. And post-COVID, it was 16,000 people coming over the weekend. And last year we had 12,000. So it's,
wow.
Yeah, it's steadily, increasing. And, we're just getting great feedback. People love coming. They love everything, the experience. So every year we're trying to think of new ways that we can incorporate a little bit more of who we are, because powwows aren't traditional to like Kahnawake's culture. They're Kanien'kehá people. we adopted that, more from the Plains people. But when you come to the powwow in Kahnawake, we have our traditional smoke dancing, which is part of our Iroquois culture. So that's a nice twist that we put in it. And then we have our Friday night social, which is open, and that's more traditional. So it's ours is special.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because I'm biased.
So that's a little part that you open up a little bit more and share a little bit more of the culture.
And the people in the community are generally okay with that. They know it's powwow weekend. It's what everybody calls it. The second weekend of July, it's always there. Everybody's ready, and you just know you're going to be there. And if you're not going and you stay at home, if you live in the village area of Kahnawake, like where my mother lives, I can hear the drums from her house if we sit on the porch. Wow. Not like I'm working all the time now, so I don't get to do that. But most everybody in Kahnawake loves going to the powwow, and our visitors coming in just have a great experience. So,
and the visitors are, like you mentioned it, but do you have statistics on?
We're working on collecting them. So we survey some people, and we've been increasing our digital presence for selling online tickets so that we can track a little bit more where people are coming from, and ask them, afterwards, sending that survey, how did you like it? So we're working on that. But the powwow is a grassroots initiative. I sit on the committee, and it's a group of people who are just dedicated to making sure that it keeps coming back year to year because it's so important. And
so it's not mandated by council or it's just
it's totally grassroots.
Wow.
Yeah, it's run by a committee. I think we're a committee of 8 or 9 people right now. And we had a member who retired from our committee last year who was on the original committee when the powwow started. So, it's still going, and that's how it should be continuing. It started off grassroots led from the cultural center. So they had initiated the first powwow after the crisis in 1990. And it was to bring our peoples together. It was to create those peaceful relationships again, and have that safe space where we can, practice our culture. And then it just kept continuing. So it's going to keep going that way.
That's good. And the site itself, is it just a pragmatic place where it's just convenient to do it there? Or is it also symbolic because that's, when you look at the hardest part of the clash, you have the images of the bridge, but you have the image of the helicopters and the army that was there with Joe Norton and Billy Tulip Rivers that were there. Those pictures are really strong. And I remember going there after 90 and passing there, remembering, going, it's really crazy that I'm walking where all this tension was, and now I'm going in the same path, but it's going to celebrate and to be joyful. It's surreal, but at the same time, symbolic.
Well, it's symbolic and that's why we always do it on the second weekend of July.
Okay.
Because we're commemorating, that date where we don't want to forget what happened, but we want to remember, that we resisted, that we stood for our rights, that we stood for our people, that we combined forces where we were needed, and that we showed our strength as a sovereign nation. And, fighting the Canadian army right there on our soil. So that's where it was. And we've had people ask us in the past, because it was, you've been to powwow, there's big lineups to get in. So we've done different strategies to alleviate that. But they said, are you ever going to move it? The parking's bad. It's hard to get on the island. Are you going to make 2 bridges? And we said, well, where would we put it? It's there for a reason. And if we move it, then it's going to lose that significance.
The symbolism.
So, we have to remind people why it's there and the importance of it. And I think it's just beautiful there. Everybody knows it's on the island is where the powwow happens, and it's a nice place for us to all gather.
Well, if it gets really, really big, then you can bring in some earth and expropriate the seaway
back, right? We're going to quote that right now.
Well, you have to have fun with these things, you know. Yeah, it's quite spectacular. I often miss the powwow because it's the second week of July, and often that's when we all go on vacation and stuff. But when I am here, I make sure I go because it's always, like you say, it's a lot of fun. It's lots of great things to see, but to taste too, because the food is awesome.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we, at Tourism, we created our smaller food festivals, where we have a little bit sometimes of dance, a little bit, you know, showcasing our culture with some workshops, because people travel at that time, and we can't afford to put on multiple powwows, you know, within a year. It costs so much. So by putting on the smaller, more intimate events, it creates that nice atmosphere, that authentic, and that relationship exchange.
Exactly. And not too far along the way, when you pass in front of the hospital and you go westwards, we come across the sculpture of the bridge memorial. I don't know if you want to speak to us about that a bit.
So if people come into Kahnawake, we have a commemoration for the men who had died when the Quebec Bridge fell. So we had 33 men from the community who unfortunately passed away when the bridge fell. And it's a beautiful structure that highlights the importance of ironworking, the beauty behind the work, and all the families. And there's a tree that's planted for each one of the men and their families. It's along our bike path, and it's one of the points that we usually stop on our tours, and we talk about it because it was one or two of the first jobs really that our people were working on as iron workers. It was around the time where we started, you know, the late 1800s, early 1900s, and after that point, because when the bridge fell and those men died, the population was much smaller. So it affected so many families. You know, there were some fathers and sons or brothers who were part of the job where, you know, their last names were completely wiped out because they didn't have children yet.
Exactly.
So, you know, even some of my coworkers, we had visited the sculpture last year, and we were talking about it. And my aunt had told me a story where at the time so my grandmother was engaged to one of the workers, or great grandmother, and had he not passed away, then she would never have gotten with, you know, her partner, and then we wouldn't have had my family. So, you know, that's a crazy story right there. And you know, listening to those, and there's so many stories like that. My husband has similar story, and then, you know, one of my coworkers, you know, their family was a part of it, and it all trickles down into all of our families. It's still so relevant today when you visit it and you see all the different families that were affected. So after that point, the women, because we are matrilineal and our women make the decisions and tell, you know, what we're going to do. So they said, because it was a huge grieving period, from now on, our men are not going to all work on the same jobs. And they started spreading out to all the different cities. So that's where we really started branching out into ironworking. Yeah. And for a long time, even today, there's still a lot of ironworkers who work from Kahnawake in New York, Boston, Toronto, or traveling all over. Some worked out in Vegas, and, you know, they're still using that to drive our economy in Kahnawake. And that's one of the reasons too why we speak so much English within the community, because we branched out. A lot lived in the States and raised their families speaking English and came back.
Exactly. Well, you're talking about a circuit, tourism circuit. Can you talk to us a bit about what the tour would be like?
Yeah. So we have a welcome center within Kahnawake, and now we have our new Ganadakwangé Cultural Arts Center, which has our new museum facility, which will be done in the summer. And that will be one of the highlights of everybody's visit, to visit our museum. It's going to be the place that we are telling our story, like I mentioned before. It's absolutely magnificent. I've seen the renderings. I've been hearing from our museum designer and creators of just, all the content that's going to be included in there, starting from, who we were, who we are today.
Yeah.
And just even looking at the space is beautiful. So that's going to be one of the biggest stops. The Cultural Center was always a part of our tour experience. They always had a museum. Now they're stepping it up, to the next level, about 10 stories high.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a pretty amazing feat that we've been undergoing and that we're going to be launching. So that's more the historical, cultural side of our tour. You can visit the St. Kanien'kehá Shrine. They have a museum and learn about the importance of why is there a church in the community? Why do we talk about it in part of our tour? Why is it important to, the village area where you see Fort St. Louis? Everything has history. We visit the Quebec Bridge Monument. And then so if you're on a group tour, depending on the interests, our tour guides will tell you different things, because it's not a cookie cutter tour that you're getting. It's a unique experience. And our tour coordinator will, call you and say, what do you want to learn? Are you interested in sports? Are you interested in education, culture, history? Some people are interested in environment, so they'll have a more environmental tour. We can do medicine walks. So, the average visitor coming in, if you're just walking in, you can get a walking tour, history, storytelling, soon visit our museum, and you can visit St. Kanien'kehá Shrine. And we always recommend that you go try a restaurant or go shopping at one of our local boutiques where you can support local artists.
Exactly.
So, we have about 6 local boutiques that sell handmade goods from the community. We have some that are, some make body products. We have some that make, moccasins, jewelry. There's so many. And so we try to support all that. And we ask our visitors, what do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do you want to buy? So we can point you in the right direction. Not everybody has the same interests, and we have something for everyone.
So you adapt it to the people's interests, and
absolutely,
and probably they learn a little more than what they expected at the same time.
Oh, for sure. And when you stop at our welcome center, it's not just that. Can you point me in the direction? Usually you'll talk to our staff, and then we have things within the building, little decorations or artwork, and they say, okay, well, what about this? Tell us the importance behind. We have a cradle board, so we talk about the cradle board. Why that's important to us. We carried our babies, and we still do it today, and people are so amazed. It's not just a long lost culture that you're here learning about. This is a living culture. Exactly. We are still practicing it and living as modern day society. We're driving cars, and we're not just going by canoe anywhere. And, when we go to university, sometimes people will still ask us, do you live in a teepee?
It's crazy.
And we have to break those stereotypes. We don't live in teepees. Our people, we had longhouses, but we don't live in longhouses anymore. So, telling those histories is part of our everyday lives.
Yeah, but that ignorance is, I think, more predominant in certain societies. I always remember Mercer, one of our Canadian TV hosts there, he went to the United States with a petition telling Americans that the government of Canada forces all Canadians to live in igloos without electricity, and that they want him to sign the petition so that they can bring back electricity in the igloos. And you have the American people go, oh yeah, that's terrible what they're doing to you, but without realizing that it makes no sense.
Yeah, no.
So
there's a lot, and that's part of tourism is education.
Exactly.
And we like to call it edutainment. We're
That's
here,
right.
You're coming to learn, but you're having fun while you're doing it. And it's really enlightening because we're making those connections with people, and everywhere you go, you talk about, it's not just who we are, we're sharing about our culture, but we're also learning. Where do you come from? What's your culture?
Exactly.
Do you speak your language? and you want to know about us, but we want to know about you also,
Exactly.
because it's two-way. We create that relationship. So it's
like the turo wampum.
Absolutely. That's just who we are,
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people coming will say, oh, I feel we're part of the family, you know, when we come to Kahnawake, because we're very close knit, and a lot coming from, neighboring municipalities or big city, they don't have that close neighborhood environment where when I walk into the cultural center, my neighbor is working right there at the entrance, and I say hello, but she's also the cousin of my husband, and we're asking about kids and what's happening on the street, who's building next door.
Community.
And then it's a community. And then the visitors are like, wow, you guys know everybody, because our tour guides are giving the tour and they're waving to everybody passing by on the street. And it's a community. And when you're here, you're treated like you're part of the family, like you're one of the cousins, and we're going to tease you, and you're going to have fun.
That's right.
Because it's who we are. We're just genuine. We're not just putting on a show. It's who we are.
It's real life just happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And it reminds me, because through the years that I've been working, I have friends in Kahnawake, have been immersed, but I also worked in the field of Indigenous relations. I feel like a lot of non-Indigenous people find that there's something from their past that they find that thing that they're supposed to be linked to, that attachment, they find it in Indigenous communities, whereas in non-Indigenous communities, with industrialization and individualization of people and of structures, people just lose themselves a bit in that, and we're hungry for finding something to belong to, and seeing that is always something that.
And it's one of the downsides of colonization across the globe, where a lot of our cultures have been either wiped out or colonized, and been told that that it's okay to separate yourself from family, that it's okay to not speak your mother tongue, that it's okay to just, push for being successful and, working that 9 to 5. And, what is really important, and what's beautiful about our community is we're still rooted, in what are the true values? What is it that we want out of life? And family, it always goes back to who you are, who your family. Like if you walk anywhere and an elder doesn't know who you are, they say, well, who's your mother? Because they're going to see who you are, where your family is. We introduce ourselves, with our clans. And it's one of the things that the world has kind of lost, and that reconnection that people feel, because we still have a lot of it.
Exactly.
Where if we go away to school, you're not uprooting everything and living somewhere else. You're going to school and you're coming back to your community. When we talk about economic development, for a lot of cities, economic development is bringing outsiders in. You want to attract people to come and live in your community. Ours is the opposite. We want to attract our people to stay.
Exactly.
And we want our economy to thrive, because we are living in our community, and we want it to be there for our next generations, and securing that, our future children are going to have a safe space.
Yeah. And speaking of people that are coming into the community to visit, do you have statistics on that though? Yeah.
Yep. So
what does it look like?
So we collect statistics at the tourism office, and we collect it at our cultural center, at some of our events, at the powwow. But what we don't have are the people coming in who are shopping, who are spending, local dollars. So we're working on a study right now of seeing how tourism's impacting the community in terms of revenues, and, that long, not just long term, but the indirect benefits of tourism, so that we can have that sustainability and show that the efforts that we're doing is worthwhile. But we get about, 1,500 to 2,000 people just stopping at our welcome center every year, coming and checking it out. Cool. What can we do? We had last year 260 tours, I believe, group tours that were coordinated. And then we have, regular walk-in tours during the summer, so people can come in and do those. So, our stats are building. They're increasing each year. We're seeing a steady rise in our visitors, and it's only growing because we're doing the work. We're doing the marketing, we're doing the advert, we're building those relationships with tour operators and the greater tourism industry, and people are really learning about who we are. And now that we have our center, we're hoping that we're going to see that boost.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have an idea of the origin of the people, or is it just mostly Montreal?
Yeah, no. We see about 50% of our clientele are Quebecois or from Ontario, just coming local, checking it out, and about 50% are Francophone. And then we have people coming from the States. Because, Kahnawake is very popular in the States. It's close to Montreal, so it's an easy destination to learn about Indigenous people, if that's the first kind of encounter. And then we have a lot of people coming from abroad. So international visitors, we have a lot of people coming from Germany, Algeria. We have a lot coming from Mexico. Some who visit the shrine, who are very religious. So they have their own kind of visitorship. Yeah. Different demographics who are coming for visiting St. Catherine. But yeah, there's a lot of people coming visit, and it varies sometimes. But a lot of our group tours within the past 3 years have been school groups. We've seen a lot of the teachers in the local school boards. Okay. They want to come and bring their students to really have that authentic experience, and so that they're hearing and learning the stories firsthand, because they don't have it in the textbooks.
And would you say that's stimulated by reconciliation or the promotion of reconciliation? Yes. Is there something in the school boards, or do you know if there's...
They're working on it, I believe. Yeah. Certain school boards are doing different things. We work a lot with the New Frontier School Board, and I know they have an Indigenous advisor that works within their school board from our community. So they work with all the schools and do workshops within the schools, and then they bring them for visits. So that is a huge step, and it does have a lot to do with reconciliation. There was a rise in the demand and interest, and there was a lot of funding that was given also, so that they could go on these activities, they could participate. However, in the last year, that funding was reduced.
Oh, is it federally funded, or?
I'm not 100% sure.
The school board's probably provincial, but...
Yeah, but there was a huge cut, which kind of stopped a lot of visitors, a lot of the groups from coming and visiting, but a lot of their activities also had to be reduced.
Yeah. So, and anything from the French school board? I was about to say Catholic because I'm very old and that's the way it was. But
yeah, there's some. One of our struggles, being a primarily Anglophone or Mohawk speaking community, is that we don't have so many Francophone or French speaking tour guides, because we want to offer a good product. So we're working on developing that on our side as well. But we do get interest. We do get people coming from some. It depends on the teacher. Yeah. Yeah. Usually it's led by the teachers right now.
And obviously, asking the question, you're answering it. But if there was some kind of program where reconciliation was part of, a training for the teachers before, when the school year starts, if there was some kind of Indigenous awareness training given to teachers. I know I dream that they do this for politicians. Like
I think everybody
shouldn't be able to hold office if you didn't, follow
learn certain things. I 100% agree. I think our future is with our children. Right. We want them to be able to learn everything they can while they're those little sponges. And by showing them the truth, they not only learn, but then they go home and they speak to their parents and they start having those family conversations about, what did you learn at school today? And then they start bridging those gaps with their parents, who maybe were, children when in 1990. And they only heard stories, and then it starts creating that ripple effect through our our children so that it's just going to be better in the future. So I think that by working with the children, by having those teachers go through the training programs so that they're aware is really one of the largest steps at moving forward. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long process of educating and working together and baby steps to get there. But I'm very positive that we'll get there one day. I think when maybe my kids are growing up, we'll see
hope
really
for it.
Big positive change. Yeah.
And how about internation tourism?
Yeah.
Do you guys get a lot of people from other nations?
Yep. We are hoping that with our new center, that's going to bring a lot more of our, sister communities, the populations coming from the other nations. We actually started last year the first meetings of our Haudenosaunee peoples in our confederacy. All the me's, all the tourism development managers, talking to each other and creating this little network of what are you building? What do you have? What resources do you have that can we share? What events are you putting on, or what kind of artists do you lean towards, or what kind of packages are you offering? Because it's kind of new, Indigenous tourism in Canada is new in itself. It's only in its 13th year. So, we're all kind of learning from each other, not just within our Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but Indigenous Tourism Quebec itself is a huge catalyst of helping Indigenous tourism within the province. There's 11 different nations, and they're helping, 55 different communities to build Indigenous tourism experiences. So we're learning from everyone what they're doing, and we're seeing, where some of our partner communities are being overwhelmed with visitors, and they said, "Are you ready to take some? Because we'll send them your way." Like, not yet. But then we're in the same boat sometimes, where we're like, "Oh, we can't accommodate this group," so we call some of our partners and we say, "Can you take them?" Yeah, absolutely, send them our way. So we're sharing.
Well, that's good.
So that way, if people want to come and visit, it's not like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you." You can still have an experience, and we know that it's going to benefit one of our Indigenous communities, right?
Exactly.
So we do see a lot starting.
Yeah.
A lot of that sharing happening. Our team just participated in the Indigenous Tourism Conference in Edmonton in February, and that's a big family gathering, I like to call it. They have like 1,200 delegates who are getting together, learning about the industry, how is it growing, tips, tricks of the trade, and it's very inspiring to see the successes that are happening out there across Turtle Island.
So I guess tourism must represent quite an important portion of economic,
Yeah, I'm really
return?
Bad with statistics to give you those percentages.
Well,
but yeah, I do know that it is a big, a new and rising factor in the overall GDP of tourism dollars and revenues within Canada. They've been doing a lot of studies to see how much are we actually bringing in and contributing, how many jobs are provided within our Indigenous tourism sector. So the Association of Indigenous Tourism in Canada is really doing great at collecting those stats and helping to lobby on our behalfs with government, for funding. There was just an announcement not too long ago that there's funding that's being put into Quebec Indigenous tourism, and I believe that came from the federal side as well. So, having those conversations where little people like me can't be in those spaces, but they can be, and they're making sure that our voices are being heard for the whole population.
I think they use tourisme autochtone.
Tourisme autochtone Quebec.
It's really. I've seen them around a lot of kiosks.
Yeah, and they help us because we can't. They go to Berlin, they go to New York, they go to these big markets where they can promote for us. But we can't afford to do that. We have a small team, somebody to be away all the time to be participating isn't feasible.
That's right.
So they go on our behalf and they bring us a lot of new business. They create those relationships. They help give tips for marketing. And it's good to have that type of support, because without it, it's hard for, small tourism within communities if there's no body leading it. And sometimes it's just businesses, and they're helping those businesses. Maybe one entrepreneur who's the accountant, who's answering inquiries, who's also guiding tours. In some remote communities, it's like that.
That's it.
So it's, it's beautiful the way that we work together.
Yeah, because it's really booming. I've been, watching for a long time and very interested in Indigenous issues. And, you look at Venez, they have big festivals. I was at Washat 2 seasons. And I mean, they had Brian Adams there, and it's like huge names and big numbers of people. It's like there's something happening anyway.
Yeah, and they put on the Gwe Festival in June now. Yeah. And it's 3 days where, it's Indigenous performers, artists, you can do workshops, and then they have a little area where all the 11 nations are set up. So you can go and meet somebody from the nations, and you can learn maybe about the language, or you can learn a skill that they're demonstrating, and ask questions, and really, meet Indigenous peoples, because they put it, in the middle of Quebec, where there's thousands of tourists coming through, and some people have never met an Indigenous person before, and they're having that first experience. So it's a nice little gateway, to each community, about learning what the experiences could be, where you could go next.
Exactly. So coming full circle, the neighbors.
Yeah.
How about Roussillon? I mean, I know in my past life, when I was part of the administration board with the other mayors, we did have like tourism. Part of our mandates was tourism. It was always a challenge, honestly, to get people to say, well, we need to include Kahnawake. Of course, on the other side, like Kahnawake was always like, what do these people want? So there was a little bit of fear there, and but it was always a little more complicated. But is there like, is it working? Yeah,
it's beginning. So we do participate with Tourism Montérégie, and just recently they asked that I be a member of their board. So that's a big step, having that inclusion. The work still needs to be done, a lot of education. People don't realize the challenges that we face, and the importance of certain values we have might be different, from other communities or municipalities. I know Roussillon is working on their tourism strategic plan right now, and they're actually we've been trying to meet.
That's good. Well, it's
for the past few months.
It's good.
Of seeing how we can work together, perhaps. And I know that there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, it's complementary. I mean, people are gonna, move along the axis that leads to Kahnawake in and out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty.
Yeah, but there's a lot of apprehension.
Yeah.
On both ends, I think still. And for us in Kahnawake, that we've been given this little parcel, right? Our reservation.
Yeah.
For us, so we have to keep it now. Because what are we going to get back?
Exactly.
And our political leaders are working towards our seigneurie lands, about reclaiming those lands. That's working with our municipalities. And at the same time, they're developing those lands for tourism, economic development, residential. And we see that growth happening on the lands that we could potentially get back.
Yeah.
Now, how do we approach it? I always try to stay out of politics. It's not my forte. But I feel that it will get very political, in how we work together.
Yeah.
Even as simple as creating bike paths that lead to one another. Some people don't want our communities to connect. Some people do. So, why? Is it trauma-based because of what happened in the past? Is it we don't want to evolve in that way because we don't need to? So there's conflicting, wants and needs within our community as well, within our neighboring communities. Safety is a big issue. bringing a lot of outsiders in, it puts our community at risk.
Yeah.
You know, where you know your neighbors, you mostly know everybody. Our population is, you know, getting up there where you don't really know everybody anymore, and it's not as safe as it used to be, where you used to let your kids just run around, ride your bikes wherever, and come back when the street lights turn on. You know,
exactly.
That's how I grew up.
Yeah.
Now, would I say the same thing for my kids? Probably not, because there's a lot happening within our community now. It's not as safe as it was. So that fear of when we overdevelop, you know, where we have all these different accesses and it's easier for people to come in, well, it's easier for all those other things to happen where it's not as safe. So those are things, you know, the safety of our families, of our children is always the most important. And I think that that's always on our minds when we're planning. And it's hard when you talk about development and change. So we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I think
and with having those conversations,
exactly. That's what I think the conversations that we're having right now. And unfortunately, I'm looking at the clicker and where we have seconds left. But I would really like to thank you very, very much for participating. I think it's very enlightening and it was certainly very interesting. So thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome for having me. And if you want to learn more, come visit us.
Yeah, you bet. I will be posting all the information, all the links and addresses. A few words in French now, in closing. Merci beaucoup d'avoir écouté cet autre épisode de notre émission sur les Kanien'keháka, les hôtes sur le territoire et nos voisins au quotidien. Donc, soyez des nôtres à la prochaine semaine parce qu'on continue de rencontrer nos voisins et apprendre ensemble. On a.